Welcome to Bridging of Ages. My name is Dan Mendelevitz. Today we're going to be talking about the demographic time bomb. There is a demographic time bomb coming for your organization or business. It is relentless. It is coming for all of us. It is the way the world is changing. It's one of those factors that we all find that is outside of our business or organization that will affect all of us. We're going to talk today about what it is about, how it affects us, and how we can react favorably to it to move forward. We'll be right back after a quick note from our sponsor to talk about the demographic time bomb. Welcome back to Bridging of Ages. Today we're talking about the demographic time bomb. What is the demographic time bomb? In today's world, we have increasing life expectancy. People are living longer and living healthier longer. And this is leading to a larger, older population. And while we may have increased demands for healthcare and social services, we have a lot of people in this group who are very viable and still ready to work and to increase the productivity of your business. At the same time, we have falling birth rates. Fertility rates are down all over the world. We see this in emerging markets. We see these in established markets. And we're even seeing this in some of the poorer areas of the world. And this is something that is going everywhere. People are having less kids, and they're doing them, and they're having those kids a lot of times at an older age. This is going to create some real economic and social challenges for us. If you look at an aging population combined with a shrinking replacement number, we should have some real concerns how that's going to work. And if you think about it, if you are not actively retaining and hiring older workers and getting ahead of the curve, you are going to have that catch up with you. If you're only looking at the younger groups, there aren't going to be as many of them. And you will be doing direct competition with other businesses and organizations that are going to be looking for the same people. Let's look at the decreasing birth rates. So there's a study done by Goldman Sachs, and it was done for a UN organization. And if you look at it, the assumptions that we used to do about replacements are not really true anymore. A lot of the demographics, what they do is they go from 15 to 64, and they limit that group. And there's a assumption that there's going to be a one-to-one replacement from younger workers to older workers as they retired. And you may hear this a lot in the business news and stuff. And they always talk about, they go, people who are older are retiring and everything else. And a lot of times they aren't necessarily retiring, or they don't want to be retiring, but they may be being pushed out. And the assumption is, oh, we'll just have younger people to replace them. But if you look at the real demographics of what's happening and the decreasing birth rates, what you will find is that those replacements aren't coming. And over time, it's going to get less and less. We have, for the first time in this world, where our populations are plateauing and they're going to start to decrease. You see this everywhere. You see this in China, you see this in Russia, you see this in the US, and even and places like South Korea and Japan, where it's very much affects how their replacement amounts aren't there anymore. People are not having as many children, and when they are, they're having them at an older age. So let's look at how the implications are for the labor market. The coming labor shortage. So, as we've already talked about, and as you'll see, those younger people are not going to be there for your business. So, how do you look at that? You know, as I said, the labor statistics always rely on this like 15 to 64 age range as the working age range. But why do we assume that in a time when people are living longer in a very viable and active way? When people get past 64, that's really a number that was established back in the 30s. If you think about it, here in the US, Medicare was 64. And the reason for that is that in the 30s, they thought that people just couldn't work past that time. And when some very heavy labor situations, it was even earlier than that because the body just wore out. And this assumption that people want to retire is an old one and it needs to be replaced. And if you look at this demographic time bomb that's coming, it's very important for you to think about those replacements aren't going to be there. So if we stay within our current policies where we move people out of businesses and organizations as they age and assume that we're just going to funnel it in from the bottom, it's not going to be happening as we go forward. There's going to always be an increased demand for skilled workers. And people with long-term experience have those skills. Not only do they have those skills, they have the ability to mentor the next group in with those skills. So you're actually benefiting. And we've talked a lot about this on, during this show about the intergenerational teams being more productive and being more innovative. Because if you think about it, we have ideas from a wide spectrum of experiences. And when we look at mentoring situations and what they call reverse mentoring, where you have somebody who's newer who is mentoring somebody who's been there for a while and some of the new techniques, we can be much more successful. However, this is going to require employer adaptation. We can't do things the same way we always have. And everybody knows business always moves forward. You can't look at what you have today and expect that to be the same down the road. It doesn't work that way. And when we only hire for what we have now and only retain for what we have now, our business is not moving forward and it's not developing and increasing. Organizations that don't evolve tend to die. And with the coming labor shortage, there's great implications for that. I'd also like to take a look at some of the cost benefit considerations for intergenerational teams. As we've already mentioned, there is greater productivity. And if you look back at some of our previous shows, we talk about how intergenerational teams are extremely powerful. They have the highest productivity and innovation of any type of teams. If everybody's the same, we're not looking at things differently. And think about what your customer base is. Is it all the same demographic? Usually not. Almost all businesses don't go to one demographic. So if your teams don't reflect what you're selling to or what your organization is servicing, then you are not going to have that insight into what the customer needs. The other thing that you find is we have less turnover in intergenerational teams. So we all know that when you have turnover, it's very expensive. It's expensive to hire, and it's expensive when somebody walks out the door. So if you want to save those costs for hiring and training, building intergenerational teams, and being aware of this time bomb that's coming demographically, it's very important. It also leads to stability. So if you want greater stability, you have to have different levels of experience because you have to develop it. Think about some of your older, more experienced workers. What's really important is they retain the understanding of what happens within the business. And they need to pass that on to the next group of less experienced people. So if you're able to have that in-house and those people can interact, you are going to be much more stable because operationally you have more people who understand how things work. If you think about how people work, we like to have these set ways of doing things and stuff, but what really happens is people do shortcuts all the time in order to get their work done. So it's very important to understand what those shortcuts are and who has the institutional knowledge. We don't want that walking out the door. So if you're having higher productivity and you're having greater innovation and you're having better stability, you're going to have better results on your return on your investment. And we're all looking for that. So how can you get ahead of this demographic time bomb? If you really want to win, you have to hire and retain older workers to offset having fewer younger workers. Now, that doesn't mean you don't hire younger workers because they're vitally important to your business. And as we talked about with intergenerational teams, they have to be wildly demographic. They have to be different ages in order to be the most powerful. Are you willing to look at how you hire, how you retain? Do you even know how it works? My experience has been that a lot of times at the higher levels, it's not even understood how people hire, how their HR is reflecting outside of the business, and how things are actually done. And you really need to examine that. And you have to ask the hard questions within your organization. And older employees are just always demonstrate a more dependable performance. And why would you want to push them out? Why would you not want to hire them? Because they can give power and knowledge to your younger workers. So you really want to make a strong commitment to intergenerational teams. And when do you want to do this? You really need to start now because this demographic time bomb is already in progress. It's already happening. We're already seeing less young people being born. We're seeing less entering the workforce. And we're seeing older workers be viable much later in life. So why do you want to start now? You know, there's an ancient proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now, so that you will have that tree 20 years from now. So think about it. How are you going to get ahead of this demographic time bomb? Walk through what your hiring process is. Don't ignore older workers. Don't ignore younger workers. Don't ignore the ones in between. Set up your systems and realign them to retain the people that will benefit your business. If you're not doing that now and you're pushing them out, you're losing your institutional knowledge. You're losing the people who can mentor the next group. And this will catch up with you eventually because there are going to be less and less younger people coming into the workforce because of the demographics that are there in real life. After a note from one of our sponsors, we'll come back and we'll talk about some action items that you can do in order to get ahead of the demographic time bomb. Welcome back to Bridging of Ages. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the demographic time bomb. Let's get into some action items that you can do in your business or organization in order to get yourself ahead of this demographic time bomb. What's the most important thing? You need to start now. Look at what you have now in your organization. Are you willing to look and say, how are we doing this now? If you're using one of those ATS systems, do you really know the parameters that are in there? Are they excluding older workers? Are they excluding younger workers? Are they excluding other demographics that you want within your organization? A lot of times we don't know, because these systems are automated, and now with the advent of AI, they're even more so. A lot of times the people who use these tools don't even know how they're working or not working is the case. And we're concerned we're getting this flood of people coming in, and how do we handle it? But perhaps you want to take a look at a different way. And as we talked about in a past show, when you're a small or medium-sized business, it's even more important that you look for an alternative way to bring people in. And if you take a look at the previous show, you'll see some of the ideas that we have done with that. So do you know where you are in the starting point? Because as we said, you need to start now. And we all know, business moves very quickly and organizations change. And it's important that we look at what we have and where we want to go. So make sure you're setting those goals towards what you want to do and how you, as your business or organization, is going to deal with this demographic time bomb, because it's going to march on. It's coming whether you like it or not. So it's really important that you understand that you need a good mix of older and younger workers in order to move forward, because the demographics tell us that there's going to be less and less younger people coming into the system, and that older people are going to be viable much longer than you are used to. So you need to move aside those stereotypes and biases, whether conscious or unconscious, in order to start now. After you've gone through that, you need to build mentorships within your organization. If you don't already have this system of mentorship, you really need to take a look at it and understand how it can work for you. Now, as I mentioned, mentorships are important in both directions. I know whenever I've been in a mentorship situation, whether I was a mentor or a mentee, I never felt it was successful unless I and the other person were both learning. So it's important that you organize these things in a way that they help each other. And we all know that for somebody who wants to get up into the higher echelons of especially larger corporations, it doesn't happen without a mentor. So it's important that you set up those systems and identify those people who you can grow and move forward. But if you push out the people who are there to mentor them, it's not going to work. But what's also great is what I found is when I work with a person who is much younger than myself, I always can learn from them because I'm sitting there going, I have to be open to learn. I have to actively listen to that person because everyone has something to offer to the company or the organization. It's very important that we look at this as a two-way street. So we want to build the traditional mentorship where you have a older person working with a younger one, but we also need to build reverse mentorships, as they're called now, where we have a younger person who is mentoring the older one. And you need to talk to your people and train them in the fact that they need to be open to looking at this in both sides. So, as we said with the first one, you got to start now. And one of the things you need to start now with is building mentorships within your organization and business. These are critically important. And a lot of companies don't do this. And they're losing those vital people who can really be the innovators and the problem solvers going forward in your business. Because we all know the speed of business is very quick. So it's worthwhile to bring that in for you to have the edge. And the third action item is looking at your hiring and retention practices. Do you even have guidelines for hiring and retention? Or do you just kind of wing it? I've seen both. We like to think that we have hiring and retention practices, but in most larger organizations, my experience has been that we push you out when you get older and we drag you in when you're younger. Well, with the demographic time bomb, you're missing on both ends. And you're missing in the middle. I don't want to forget those people who are in the mid-career. But what we see is there is less hiring on both ends. The youngest ones and the oldest ones. And if you've seen on previous shows, we've talked about the fact how that works and how we don't accommodate for that kind of thing. So you really need to look at your hiring processes. I talked earlier about, you may be using an ATS system, some kind of AI built on top of it. You may have built into your HR system or your hiring managers how they have to work in particular procedures. You may be taking way too long to bring your stars in. Are you still doing 5 or 8 interviews? Are you making them go through hours of problems that that they're essentially doing free work for you? None of that works because the people that you really want aren't going to wait for you for that kind of stuff. Are you not answering people and letting them know where they are in the process? Are you ghosting them? Because remember, this reflects on your business. It's actually a form of marketing. So look at your hiring retention processes. And on the retention side, are you pushing people out too early? Do you assume as they get older they can't handle it? Remember, people who've been doing this for a long time invented a lot of the processes and technologies that you are currently working with. They have a deep knowledge of how all that works. So action item 1, start now. Action item 2, build mentorships within your organization. And action item 3, look at your hiring and retention practices. And for the tip of the day, start now or fall behind your competition. It's really that simple. The demographic time bomb is coming your way and is coming all of our way. This has been Bridging of Ages. My name is Dan Mendelevitz. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Invest in brain power, fuel brilliance.